My other video got cut off when my daughter came outside and interrupted. But what I was saying, I was going through a really hard time in my life, and I was, like I said, had to go back to night shift, and it was actually just the beginning of a very difficult period, a very difficult 4 or 5 year period. Um, so I was at work this first night of night shift, back on night shift at this new place, and there wasn't a lot to do. It was a very slow time of year that I was working, so it was kind of nice. Um, I wasn't like getting hammered at work, so that was good. And I was watching on PBS, Channel 13, PBS. They had a show about samurai swords and how they made samurai swords back in ancient. Well, they still do. And it's quite an amazing process, and I wish I could find that video again. It was so amazing. I mean, they spent basically these Shinto priests, they would spend several days without sleeping, eating. They would just tend the fire to keep the fire just the right temperature, and just add just the right amount of substances to the carbon. And I mean, it was remarkable, but it was kind of a apropos at the time, because really what was happening is my spirit was being put into this furnace, into this fire. And one of the problems here on earth is we think our life is supposed to be some kind of magical fairy tale. We've basically been deluded to believe that you know someone's going to come along and rescue us, right? But if you look at ancient manuscripts, and you look at ancient mythology and previous cultures, literary works, and they talk about the hero journey. And Joseph Campbell was a famous professor. He taught, I think it was at Columbia University. He did a special on PBS with Bill Moyer, and they talked about the hero's journey. And he spent his whole life, dedicated his whole life to trying to crack the code on this. And he looked at all these different ancient manuscripts and did a lot of research and found really a lot of similarities between different cultures. They all had a certain theme they followed, the hero's journey. And I had an experience and I think I talked about it before, but I had an experience maybe a couple years ago, a year ago, can't remember. And I was getting ready to go to work, and it was just, I was, I don't know, not feeling great and stuff. And I realized in my mind, I just had this thought: be your own hero. Be your own hero. And there's a lot to be said for that, because if we're waiting for someone else to come along to make to, you know, battle the demons inside of us, it's never going to happen. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to do it. We have to step up and do it ourselves. I was reading something Kamala said the other day about, this path requires intense self effort. We think about what it takes to have mastery, right? I mean, if you were to become uh, an archer or an Olympic sport, take any Olympic sport, the level of mastery it would require to be at that level, right? Well, that's the kind of level of mastery it requires to ascend to higher levels spiritually. And we have to be willing to, face our dragons, face our demons, and be able to, wield this sword of truth and light. Uh, I mean, just to be able to pick up the sword, right? I mean, uh, a real battle sword, a real medieval sword is heavy. It's takes a lot of strength just to pick it up, let alone know how to use it properly. So there's a lot of training involved with this spiritual path. It's not just something we fall into easily. And I just want to, make mention of this, because right now we're going through a purification time. It's going to I honestly think it could get much worse. And maybe we'll get over this little hump and it won't be bad, but who's to say in another 5 years or 10 years or whatever, we won't have another situation even worse than this. They just had an earthquake in Salt Lake City today, or last night. It actually broke one of the statues on the Mormon temple. And so that's a pretty big, it was 5.6 or something. That's a pretty big earthquake. I mean, anything could happen at any time. You can prepare, you can try to prepare, you can have things, but what if you had to evacuate your home? All you can take with you is yourself, and you've got to be able to hone that spirit, that warrior samurai spirit. I mean, if you think about these samurais, uh, on a spiritual level, I mean, they had already embraced death. They had no fear of death. I mean, think about what that really means to be able to say that, to say you have no fear of death. I mean, that's an amazing thing, right? I mean, what did they know? How could they do that, That just comes from intense introspection, from intense work on yourself. And I think as we do more and more of this cleaning and more of this work on ourselves, that fear goes away. And I don't know, we'll see, right? Is the truth is when you're standing at the doorway, you're standing at you're getting ready to check out. Well, are you going to have fear? Are you going to have joy? What are you going to have? I mean, it's hard to know. I work in the hospital, and we were talking about, I don't know who I was talking with, a lay person, I don't remember, but we were talking about do not resuscitates and stuff, and people think they get this. They think, oh no, I don't want to be intubated. Oh no, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want those life support measures. But in my history, in my 20 years of doing this, I've never had a patient that ever denied when they were having trouble breathing and they couldn't catch their breath. They were basically impending death was coming. I never had one patient say, "I'll just let me go." Not one, not one in that whole time. And so it would require a tremendous amount of willpower to do that. Okay, hope you all have a good day.